Hi, I'm Matt Bacon, and this is my point 4 cents.
Hi, I'm Jesse Cannon.
I'm Andrew Southworth.
And I'm Dustin Boyer, and this week we're talking about Spotify's big changes in listening activity credits and stories. I'll also be interviewing Howard Ballos, who is a professional in AI marketing, but is also an independent artist, and we're going to get into how he uses AI to help his own artist career.
But make sure you stick around after the interview, since we're going to talk about how old is too old to make it in music. And then behind the paywall for our members only, we're going to talk about how many singles should you release before an album and what music pros are looking for in songs. So guys, we have a note for the diehards this week that we're going to be like 2 days late with the podcast next week because we're going to be all together in NAMM filming content. So we figured that's better than you seeing us all do this from, well, for Andrew and I, 2 random hotel rooms.
I'm excited for NAMM, though. I've never been. Is it just like a Guitar Center, but larger? Is that what it feels like?
It's not wrong.
Yeah, it's significantly louder. And yeah, it's huge. I don't know if you've ever been to the NAMM Convention Center, but like
No.
you could walk in a straight line for probably 10 minutes to go across. Maybe longer.
I remember sometimes, even just walking 1 block at Anaheim is sometimes like a 15, 20-minute walk for 1 block. It's nuts.
And there's multiple floors, and you'll just be walking, and they'll be like, "Oh, is that Stevie Wonder?" And it's like, "Yes." "Oh, is that Jordan Rudess?" "Yes, yes, it is."
Don't test if Stevie is really blind, though.
Yes. That will not go over well if you throw a tennis ball at Stevie Wonder.
He will not catch it.
We should also say, Thursday at 2 in the courtyard, we're having a meetup of viewers. So if you want to come meet us, potentially be in an episode, be on camera with us, come say hi. And we also have tour dates. Matt, you want to read the tour dates?
Yes, we have 2 more dates after that. We're going to be in Nashville on January 26th at Our Vinyl. On January 28th, we'll be in New York City at a bar called Here BK. And the best part of these events that I think you should take away is not like us answering your questions, although that's helpful, sure. But what's really cool is that you're in a space with a bunch of other musicians who are really motivated, really trying to lock in, really trying to do good work, right? And so like it's going to feel very isolating sometimes marketing your music, you know what I mean? But this is a place you can go and maybe make a new friend and do something cool.
I also heard Andrew's doing free 1-hour consultings all day long.
Oh God. Oh,
Just kidding.
no, that's probably not happening. But you have to show up to find out. So maybe it is. Who knows?
Who knows? You're gonna be disappointed.
I thought about doing a thing where like anyone that gets my like business card while at NAMM, I'll like have some free download thing or whatever, but I haven't actually planned that yet. So we'll see. If you see me, say hi. Or if you see any of us, say hi. But
Don't say hi to me. No.
So guys, I'm going to share the screen on this email Spotify sent so we can go over it. Then we can see how many unsent drafts I have in my email. So
holy crap, 2,513 unsent drafts.
let's remember I haven't cleaned that in 20 years.
Okay. Yeah. That's true.
Okay, but so Spotify has these new song stories that are going to be told by third-party organizations. Does this seem weird to anybody aside from me?
Yeah, so they announced this a couple months ago when they talked about their new crediting. And so the new credits on Spotify are actually really dope because you can credit like every player on every song and the producer and the engineer and everything in Spotify, whereas up to now it's been just like songwriter, producer, performer. And they announced this feature. I don't know if they called it Song Stories then, but the idea was
it's called About the Song. I messed that up.
Okay, yeah. So about the song, and I was like, this sounds amazing. The ability to be able to say this song is about this, or I wrote this because of this, it was at this hard time in my life, whatever the story is. But you can't fill it in Spotify for artists. Basically, they're relying on like news platforms, kind of like online magazines and stuff where interviews take place to take snippets from that in probably some pseudo algorithmic way.
Well, publicists are gonna love this then. Keeps
Yeah,
them.
yeah.
Now, it's funny because I believe publicity used to really help with the algorithm. Used to have like the spiders crawl the internet, and I know that didn't become a thing. Or stopped being a thing for a while, but this is interesting. So they're pulling third party articles to talk about the song. And if you don't
Yep.
have any third party articles, but though I don't hate that. I like the idea of people are having conversations about a song on the internet and you're getting a glimpse of that to build buzz and build interest.
I,
Yeah.
I think that's a way to look at it.
That is a
I-
way.
I was gonna say that's the good faith read.
Yeah. I'm in a good mood today, guys.
Sam Duboff posted about this on his threads back in November, and someone asked, "Will About the Song be available for all artists to be taken advantage of?" And the answer was yes. All artists can get an About the Song, but not all songs will get one if there's not enough third-party information for it to be created. So it's not like arbitrarily gated to a certain size or a certain label, but it is probably predominantly going to be larger artists just because. And I asked him, what sources does it pull from? And he said it pulls from label slash distributor provided credits, who sample data, artist profile information been by artists, high quality third party sources like Time Magazine, Wikipedia, Wrap Up are examples from our blog post. So the actual song DNA, or not song DNA, about the song, Time Magazine, Wikipedia, Wrap Up. So like nothing that an
So I
indie
can't
artist
just
is
start
gonna
a
get.
blog and talk about my
No,
band. Damn.
it's gonna be
It's it,
big sources.
yeah, my nightmare scenario was like Genius saying that like Eric Clapton Tears in Heaven is about AIDS and all the things that people point out that like Genius gets super wrong and stuff like that.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a big piece. I think there's going to be I think two interesting things could happen. One, I think for a lot of people and in a lot of cases, the algorithm is going to kind of suck and pull from like stuff that's unrelated, and then you're going to have to like manually report it, which will be terrible. Or it'll pull from like a weird old article or something or match it wrong, and like I have zero faith in their ability to like do that right.
I actually think for that reason, I bet you the sources are going to be highly defined, credible sources like
Yeah,
Billboard,
I
Rolling
hope so.
Stone. Like I think to combat that, it's going to be stuff like that.
Yeah, like I wouldn't mind if like in my Twitter feed every week, Stereo Gum was like, "Hey, here's MJ Lenderman talking about the story of what Manning Fireworks is about," and that was a new feature that they were doing for people who are comfortable telling the stories around their songs. And then Spotify harvested it. I just, with content moderation these days, as we've talked about many times, every platform, specifically Spotify, that we keep dealing with, are not so into being hands-on with the customer service content moderation and approvals. So I have very, very skeptical eyes on where this feature is going.
I think that might be why they didn't just open it up to artists, because like I would love it if you could just any artist could go and just type in under a song a story about that song, because then from there and they have to moderate it. Where like, oh, are artists just using this for marketing? Are they putting in a phone number where people can join their SMS list,
I'd do
or are
that.
they putting in like racist stuff randomly?
I would not do that.
You would well, you might not do that, but somebody will. That's the thing. Somebody's gonna take advantage of it. So from there, and they're like, let's just not even deal with it. Let's just use these big platforms that we know are gonna pre-filter stuff, and then we'll just surface it, and we don't have to worry about moderating.
But what I think is interesting is I'm curious to see if people are able to get around that by doing like you know how like certain publications, and I don't think legally I can say who, certain publications, if you just send in a press release and $100, they'll just publish that. And right, like this is what Trust Me, I'm Lying is about. And it seems to me that people are going to figure out like who the one vetted source is that you can like just bribe to get your press release over out the door on, and they're just gonna do that.
But who cares
And
though? I mean,
I mean,
like,
I don't. I'm just
s-
pointing this out. I'm
so,
not saying whether it's bad or
no,
not.
I
I'm just
I
saying.
think you're right, but ultimately, I don't think it's going to be such a leveraged feature that getting it done is going to make a huge difference. So I think, if maybe it increased your streams tremendously, it'd become this huge scam, right? But I don't think it will be. So I think it'll just be this casual little feature that will barely get seen.
Okay, let me play the Satan on my shoulder, who probably talks much louder than the angel a lot. So on Twitter all week this week, there's this very funny thing that I will admit I've been enjoying where people go, this is my AI artist. They've received $5,000 this month off 17,000 streams, which we all know, lol. And then what they do is they put a picture of an artist and it's Tate McRae or AJR or Gracie Abrams to fuck around and say that. I see the problem being is that if like these stories are bullshit, is that people are going to write crazy things. But, you know, like my solution to this would be like one of the most successful content moderation things has been Music's Match being a provider for Spotify lyrics. And that 99.9999% of the time, that is a very reliable thing for what lyrics are on the platform. You know, you get occasional leaks. That time Jorkin the Peanuts started to spread. I don't know if you guys remember this, that somebody claimed a bunch of artists and wrote that their lyrics were all Jorkin the Peanuts. And, you know, you get an occasional weird thing there, but for the most part, this has been a very successful content moderation since Music's Match verifies with a driver's license your ownership.
Yeah, like I think there's a way to do it. I just have very little faith in it being done the right way, is what I'm trying to say.
Music Match seems like would actually be like a fantastic way to let artists have more control, because you either join them directly or go through your distributor who indirectly goes to them and then they do the moderation. So like having the stories be through them would kind of solve that problem, but maybe they want this to feel like this is some special thing and not just like this is something that every song has.
Yes. So we do have other changes at Spotify. They're going to now push your listening activity to other users on mobile. In the past, we've discussed how you can now send people songs on the platform itself, which I've found insanely annoying.
I'm gonna
you
send you a
ever-
song right
Have you
now.
ever gotten a message on Spotify?
Yeah, so you know what it is now is, so here's a good example is one of my friends I discuss music with a lot now will text message me it, and then it goes to the window where
Yeah.
it now says they have sent you this message, so that I have to click it again rather than when it used to just go to the song, where now it wants me to converse with them inside Spotify rather than our text thread that's easy to search when I want to talk about this later. And it annoys a nerd like me who does this all day long.
It's weird because I think that these are not features people want or need.
But you know, I was going to ask you guys, do you guys ever leave open that window that shows what your friends are listening to, and do you ever listen to music because of it?
No.
This window, I remember seeing like years ago, you could see what your friends were listening. I haven't seen that in probably 8 years.
I haven't used it in a lot of years, but I used to use it a lot more a couple of years ago, and I would regularly switch over to what friends were listening to.
But how do you see it?
Well, if I had Spotify on this computer, I'd show you on the screen right now.
I didn't think that feature. Oh no, here it is. Friend activity. I
Yeah.
haven't literally opened this in at least 5 years. And I see a few. How does it figure out who your friends are though?
You make them. So a good example is, since I worked at so many music publications over the years, is a lot of us would friend each other on there, and then you would see it. Now, hilariously, a lot of times when I'd be seeing this and be like, yes, I haven't had a conversation with this person in 6 or 7 years, but I know we have similar music taste. And so I'd see they're like rinsing, for example, the new White Reaper. I'm like, oh, I forgot that even came out. Let's hit play. Oh, it's my favorite record of the year.
One of my favorite perks of Apple Music is the like what your friends are listening to. And it's done really like it's not like in your face at all. And it figures it out by like who you've shared text, like Apple Music links through in text messages, because it's all Apple, it's an ecosystem. And it's pretty clutch because I go to my friends page of like who I know likes music like me, and then I kind of see what they're listening to, and then I go check it out. I didn't even know this was a thing in Spotify. None of my friends on here are people I even fucking know. So I don't know what I think some of them are like old ad clients or something.
Which is funny
And then
because
one of them's-
mine's like really accurate. Like I just looked at mine and it's like people I personally know, and I'm like, wow, okay, this is. I was just looking at it and I was like, this is. I don't mind this. I will say it's a bit funny to me though, because it's starting to feel like some of these features are just a way for these departments at Spotify to justify their jobs. Like, what if Spotify just stopped putting out features? It's fine. It's good enough. It's good enough. Like what, there's a certain point where like there's what is it called? Feature creep, right? Like
Yeah.
it's a little
and
much.
Then it leads to shitification.
Yeah.
it leads to Facebook. Like that's why Facebook
Yeah.
is so
Yeah.
convoluted. It's because like they have a requirement that it's something like in the first month you're at you're a software developer at Facebook, you have to ship a new feature or something along those lines. I've met a few people who are like developers there, and it's some rule like that. Like first month or first quarter,
I,
you have to ship code.
J- lifelong best friend helped build the ad feature, and she said the same thing.
Yeah. And then like you go on Facebook, it's like there's a billion sub things, and some of them are like super outdated, and it's kind of a disaster because of how long the platform's been out. All these features that have crept up, but yeah, I think you're right. Some of these features do feel like who would want this? I didn't even know this friend activity was still there. I thought it's been gone for years.
Oh, I mean, that was originally, I think the pitch of Spotify was like, hey, it's like social media, but you get to listen to music. And then I got rid of all that shit because people were using it to essentially spam everybody. And I mean, I don't mind the idea of bringing it back, but I don't know. I don't even feel like people really use social media for social media. I think the idea of social media is sort of dying. So this idea of another place to DM people stuff, it feels like it's going to create redundancies. Like you talked about, Jesse, it's like, cool, now I have to engage with this instead of just going and listening to the song.
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting because that actually was, you are right. I had Spotify beta for a year as a journalist before it actually hit the open account. And that was one of the first windows that was open on it, is that you can see all your friends who also had the Spotify beta and what they were listening to. And it was really, really great because that was one of my favorite features of Rdio, which I used before Spotify.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you guys probably weren't around back then, Andrew and
No,
Matt.
I remember RDO. I also remember like
Are
Groove
you like
Shark.
3 years older than me, Dustin?
Aren't we the same age?
Yeah, I'm 34. Aren't you like 37?
Yeah. 38.
Okay.
Do you guys remember Groove Shark? That was my favorite.
I have to say, I did not use Groove Shark. I wrote a million articles where I had to weigh in on things, and I'd like fact check it, and then I'd be like, okay, I'm never using this again.
I went from like LimeWire and Kazaa to Rhapsody.
LimeWire.
Which
Yeah.
Rhapsody was like a monthly subscription streaming platform.
That was like the
limited by
first one.
stream.
Yeah, I think E-Music was the first, and Rhapsody was right behind. Yeah.
And then I remember being like pretty early into Spotify coming
But
out to the US.
the point being, we don't really think these new features for most independent artists are going to have like a significant impact on their lives.
You know, what's one I'm using a lot though, and I'm curious if you guys are. Is I use that credits one nonstop, and then I browse through other credits of the producers I like.
That's cool. I hadn't. So you can actually click on the credits of a song and then
You can't click on every single person's credits, but like here's a great example. Is one of my friends' bands who I really, really like are looking for a mixer for their new record. They're like, do you want to mix this? I'm like, I'm not the right guy. So then they're like, okay, but who's the right guy? So I'm like, okay, here's what my vision of how you would sound is. So I go in, I find out who produced these songs. I go in, then I do a little bit of research, and I'm like, okay, this person mixed those songs, and you know, I listen to a bunch of their songs, and I say, look, they worked on all these songs. I feel like this is the direction you should go in.
It's great when the person is like linked and tagged in there. It's just the threshold of that is so absurd. Like Sleep Token, world's biggest metal band right now, not a single credit is clickable. So you have to be like Ryan Tedder or something to be clickable on Spotify. And I'm sure they're expanding it, but
I mean, I just clicked on a Bad Omen song, Joachim Carlson.
Isn't it Joaquin? Am I wrong?
Yeah.
Joaquin.
It is Joaquin.
Yeah, well, I totally just mispronounced this song. Never heard of this guy.
yeah.
I listen to all this dude's music. He's got
Mhm.
credits on Poppy, Health, Swarm, Era. Like,
Yeah.
you know, so this is interesting. I did not know
I would
this.
love it if they had this for like the majority of people on Spotify, because like it's so sick being able to like find people who have done stuff and see their other work, you know? Because like, what if you never heard of Poppy and you're like, oh, I love Bad Omens, and he like helped them get their sound, or he's a songwriter or whatever, and then you go check out Poppy, you check out Era, you check out Swarm.
They should do a playlist of like producers and stuff. That would be cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because like so many users make those like, you know, like one of my most listened to playlists is somebody just made every Sophie production that's on Spotify. And, I'll listen to that. I probably listened to that playlist over 100 times.
So they're expanding the jam feature on Spotify as well to be like remote jam. That seems like fun, I guess, if you're far away from people. Like I remember when I was in college, my wife did a semester, well, girlfriend at the time, but she did a semester abroad. And like we used to, we do like a Zoom call and we both have Netflix open and we press play and like remotely watch stuff. And then eventually there was apps that could sync and stuff. So this seems like cool thing like that, I guess. I don't know when you do
But
it
like
for
again,
music.
like I don't think anyone's like doing that.
You
I
could
mean,
I can think of an artist throwing a listening party. Like I actually know
yeah, yeah,
some
Yeah.
well,
I don't
yeah,
know
but
them,
that's
but they do
well,
like
you
an
can already
online
do that
listening.
with like
Yeah.
YouTube or whatever. But like what I'm
Well, no,
saying
no,
is like
you can do it with Spotify. A
yes, you can.
former
Yes,
guest,
you can.
former guest of the podcast, Lee Martin, made an amazing,
Yes,
amazing thing
yes,
for
he did.
listening parties with this.
You you are correct. Maybe I'm just in a condescending hipster relationship, but like I mean I am, but I don't like I don't see a place where like my girlfriend and I would have to like be listening at the same time because it's not the same as a movie, I guess. I don't know. I think it's kind of weird. I feel like you just send people links and just call it a day.
One argument for this could be if you're in a dorm and you're throwing a party, or you're in your frat house and you're on your one account and you're on your other, but everybody moves through the house and it's the same thing. Like, one of the things we should give some grace to is tech companies. We were just having this about a feature of what we do, is that sometimes we don't know what's best for our product, and you make a feature of a product and then see what happens to it in the wild. And then if you're like many of these apps, you kill it very silently about a year later when it sucks.
Yeah.
The jam feature as a whole is like sick. I think the
Mhm.
remote jam thing is just like weird. And like I use jam every week. If I'm like
Mhm.
in the car with my wife, her car's plugged into CarPlay, mine's not. And I want to put on a song, I could unplug her phone and plug in mine, but the GPS is set for CarPlay on her phone. And so not, what do? Join the jam, add it to the queue, and then we can both play music on the device, and it's pretty clutch.
I was saying to you guys, the hotel I was at in the Caribbean over the holidays, I open up Spotify to put on my own music. I get invited to the jam for the hotel, and I'm like, man, I could really fuck this party up right now. You all are listening to reggaeton, and I got some real choice cuts to start playing.
Put on some Cannibal Corpse.
That's a
Yeah.
wild
This
thing
is-
for a hotel to do.
Yeah, yeah. It was where I was like, which anal cunt song is proper for this occasion?
And
Just
honestly,
put
that
Kid
hotel,
Rock on repeat.
Oh
Ba with the
boy.
ba over and over and
Oh,
over and over
yeah.
and over again.
There we
so
go.
that means the hotel's not paying for their Spotify commercial license. They're
They're
using
still
sounds
liable for
about
that.
right with sounds,
what's
sounds,
Probably not.
soundtrack. Is that what it is? Or
sounds about right with the level of service I got at this 5-star hotel.
How's everyone doing? All right, so today I have my good friend Howard Ballos, and this is going to be somewhat of an interesting interview because Howard's technically professionally not in the music industry, but his career trajectory and his career as an artist, his budding artistry, is very interesting to me because of the influence AI has had over his career. And so I'm going to give you a little bit of a background, but then Howard, I would love for you to give us your trajectory, your how you got to where you are. But Howard was in the film industry in post-production for many years and has more recently moved and shifted over into AI, specifically focused on, I think the company was Dreamreel, right? Focused on marketing using AI to help marketing brands, bigger brands, not music brands. And now has taken that. He worked for Dreamreel for a while and now he's freelance. But what I think is really interesting is Howard is a musician, always has been. I've actually known him since he was a kid. And he's taken AI and started to use it in his music career. And him and I mean, everybody here knows the way I feel about AI. Him and I were at a party a couple weeks ago chatting about AI, and it was just really eye-opening to hear it from his perspective, as honestly a lot of you listeners, like he's a young artist, he doesn't have a team, he's looking to grow his career, and he's taking all this knowledge about AI and utilizing it to help facilitate that. But I want to give a little bit of context. Howard, tell me a little bit. So you started out in the film industry. What was your job in particular in film?
Yeah, so here in Atlanta, it's kind of difficult to get into the biz, but when I finally got my first paying gigs, Started as a post coordinator, worked my way up to AE, assistant editor, and then finally got to actually jumped immediately from that to producer editor or a predator in development for a company called Crazy Legs, where we made a lot of the unfortunately, the name is fat shows is the technical term that we would use.
Fat shows?
Fat shows, so like Thousand Pound Sisters,
Ah,
and Jody and that whole group is like the brainchild who put that together and a number of other TLC shows. But yeah, my career was like largely for the first 10 years working on junk television. I maybe shouldn't say it like that, but that
don't tell
is
my wife, she loves those shows.
hey,
Like,
they're popular
yeah, dude, they're
work.
good.
Hey, let me
Probably
tell
cheap
you
to make
something
too.
I always found interesting when I got into that space. The rule for TLC is that the president of the company has this rule, and it's that if you're watching a TLC show, imagine somebody who's in a hotel, or imagine somebody who is just walking by a TV or it's on at a gym somewhere. And if they're watching it with no sound, they should be able to understand what is going on in the plot. That is the foundation of all the content is on TLC. If you turn off the volume, you should be able to loosely understand what is happening even without volume. And that's the philosophy of those shows.
That's interesting, considering most people probably watch them while scrolling on Instagram.
Growing. And again, they're thinking of the lobbies in places of like, we want to get that customer who's locked in, having their drink at the bar, and just kind of vaguely glancing over at the TV over and over again because they can kind of follow it without needing.
Very passionate.
Yeah. Yeah. I always thought that was interesting.
Well, cool. So you were in post production, and I mean, the way you were telling me, you were the guy that was on your weekends and nights messing around in AI with post production, right?
Yeah, I mean, not just in post, but like just realizing there's a channel called Corridor Digital that was following the early stages of like Stable Diffusion, who were kind of showing they're for me filmmakers that I trusted and respected, who were very open minded to like, yo, we could do something very interesting with these tools. And I just very much kept my ear to the ground in their forums and in Discord and just was like, holy shit, there's a wave coming towards my industry, and instead of getting crushed by that wave, I would rather ride that wave. So I just took it very seriously and began to do as many tutorials in Stable Diffusion and try to learn. Basically, the big hack that they were talking about 2 years ago when this all kind of kicked off is that, yo, Stable Diffusion can kind of make images that are pretty good. And film is just images, frames per second. So if we could just make images frames per second, you could maybe make video. The biggest problem back then was something called temporal consistency. Back in the day, early video was just like every image that was generated was a little bit different every time. You were trying to get temporal consistency. So if every time it rendered a frame of your image, if it changes the image every single frame, it looks wobbly and strange. But
Yeah,
if
I
you could
remember that.
nail down temporal consistency, we might have a new tool for animation here. So when I saw that and I saw the way that the industry was going, especially here in Atlanta, I mean, honestly, it was like the roles reversed. Instead of being a hobby, that became almost my 9 till 5. And I was just doing my work on the side on my computer over here while I was really just digging into what is this tool and where will this go?
And what I find interesting is the conversation we had felt like the kind of conversations that I was having with like software designers 10 years ago. But you are not a technical person. Like you are not, well, maybe you are now. But I'm saying like it wasn't like you were coding things, right? Like you were using AI to learn how to build things in AI, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to like for me, like Rodriguez, like a lot of fucking 90s kids, like Robert Rodriguez is a big inspiration to filmmakers from my generation. And one of the things that he said that stuck out to me as like a kid was that like as a creative person, it's your responsibility to become technical because technical people really struggle to become creative. And I just
Hmm.
like took that to heart.
That's a
So I'd say
really
like with regards to technicality and like how technical I can be, I've always been a kid who was, like, into getting bootleg games running on my machine or playing games that were only compatible on an older version of Windows, so I have a more of an understanding of how, like, DOS worked or how to get into a terminal than the average person, but I was by no means, like, a coder by any like, that's yeah, no, not at all. The only reason I say this is that, like, these tools and these AI tools that are evolving are so amazing at making you things, but I always have to remind myself that I have probably a little bit more technical knowledge than the average person. But again, I didn't go to school for this, and I am in no terms a coder, and I definitely didn't have that background.
Well, and it's funny too because there was one point in our conversation where you were like, "You could just go do these things." And I was like, "I know it feels that way." And I'm certainly like, I think your point is anybody has the intelligence to be able to approach these things now. You don't need to learn these deep skill sets, but also the time that it still takes, like the time that you've invested in it is still it's a lot. It's
It
still
is.
in
I mean, for you specifically, I think the reason I point that I wouldn't say that to, like, my mom, but saying that to you as someone who knows that you are somewhat competent with computers, you are someone like you, if you did have the 20 hours a week to spare, it would take you just a month or 2 to get, like, right there. If you had no background in any of this shit, then maybe it's not there yet, but I would say, like, predictions-wise, we are driving really close to I don't know if it's 5 weeks, I don't know if it's 5 months, I don't know if it's 5 years, but we are careening towards a reality where your mom will be able to make the app that she thinks of in I was gonna say in the kitchen, that sounds wrong. In the wherever your mom happens to be at that moment, they can, like, anybody is gonna be able to make any app that they can just think of spontaneously. That is my hot take.
And I wanna get to that because in our conversation, that's what stuck out to me is I think you said, like, trash bin apps or something, like, one-time use. What was the phrase that you
Yeah, yeah,
used?
yeah. So it's like the framework I use for that is like Fight Club, where there's this whole bit about Edward Norton's character. It's how he actually kicks it off with Tyler Durden. He's talking about like single use, single service. He's talking about like
Yes.
if somebody who lives out of a suitcase, you travel a lot, everything's single serving. You have a single serving mint. You don't get a pack. You get a single one. You get a single service meal on your plane. You get yada yada yada. And he leans over to Tyler Durden and says something along the lines of like a single service friend, something like that. And I think that that's where software is really headed towards, where, like, I think we'll probably have designated apps that we use, but we are careening towards a reality where, like, you make the app for what you need to do in your job that day, fucking throw it away. Honestly,
And throw it away. Single serving
yeah,
apps
it
is
would be easier to just make it fresh again the next time you need it than even storing it on your hard drive. Like, that seems to be the direction we're headed in.
that comment blew my mind with and we can circle back to it, but I just thought it was so crazy. And I wanna circle back though to your career a little bit because I do find it so interesting where okay, so you're kind of getting to be known that this AI guy, and then, somebody starts a company, hears about you, and is like, "I want this guy on my team." And so you join Dreamreel, where you're actually building AI systems for marketing.
Correct. I mean, it's and I found myself in a really interesting role at that company where it's like technically like director of content is a title that was thrown around. Another title though was like fucking leader of R&D. It was like we got to a point because we have a handful of employees where it's like I was simultaneously trying to scout ahead of where these tools were going. And then if our team got into a roadblock with a current paying client, I would come in and try to take over the project. Be like, no, 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 we need to. This is the workflow. This is how we're going to accomplish the thing. This is a vision. Yada yada yada. And then once I got us out of the weeds, I would go back to R&D.
Well, and before this, I before this interview, I asked Howard, I was like, "What's, like, technically your title?" And he was like, technologist? I don't know." And honestly, that frames up this whole conversation because I think what again, going back to full circle, this idea that you're in the film industry, you just see this wave of, like, technology coming, and you're just like, "I'm gonna learn it," but it's so accessible that you can just become an expert at it, and this is not just, like, some 30K a year job. This is something that where Howard it's not a bubble either. He's providing enough value, and I'll give you I won't say the name of the brand, but we talked about the brand where you basically and this is the contentious part, replaced a fleet of graphic designers by creating an AI system that instead of a bunch of assets being created for ads for this brand. And so you service them those ads. You've created an AI that creates all those assets, mix and matches it almost unlimitlessly. And think about 300K worth of yearly salary, you
Probably.
know,
Oh, yeah.
way more than that. So the value that you're bringing, and you could argue that it's AI, but I would say that like what you're doing is still consolidating that value and is valuable in and of itself. So the idea that somebody like yourself can just do that is was so bewildering to me.
It's just I found myself I was reflecting on this, last night, and it's just like I found myself in this really dirty, dirty place of like all of my hobbies, all of my passions. I have began to integrate AI into my career, into the things that I like to make, all of it. And every single one of those for people inside of that community, it's a dirty word. I am not a coder. I'm not. I'm a vibe coder. Gross. Like, from somebody who codes, like, what the fuck, man? I am not a visual effects supervisor. I'm not a VFX guy. I have plenty of time under my belt using Avid, instead of After Effects, doing the real deal job, but never we would always outsource VFX to the VFX house. But I have now done multiple jobs as a VFX supervisor. That's pretty fucking gross because I don't technically have those skills. I just now I know with my skill set how to do VFX that I shouldn't be able to do. And then with regards to music, I'm a musician who's utilizing AI to help me in the producing side of things and helping me create things. And as someone, I mean, dude, as someone who reps fucking the I Ching, like my politics are about as progressive as they can get. Yet the people that I trust and respect inside of all of these communities are so against these tools, and I wouldn't necessarily disagree with them. My philosophy is more that like I didn't make these tools. I just would be a fool to not utilize them. If I could rewind it and make these tools not exist, I think that would probably be better for all of us, but they do.
Well, and see that's the conundrum, is that well, let's talk about these and because I wanna get in your music career because it's very similar to what we talked about with these graphic designers. But in some ways it's different because with you creating systems to replace those graphic designers, that is actively replacing jobs, right?
Correct.
But on the music side, the way that you're using it doesn't replace anybody's job because you don't have money to hire session players.
True,
And
true.
that's where my brain was sort of like, "Okay, wait a minute." Because well, and so let's back up and talk about your how you're using it for music because this is where, obviously I've always had an issue. So explain to me what you're doing on the music end to help create your music in a way that works for you.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think the thing is that like I mean, first of all, I would want to start this by just saying that, like, we are in this crazy time. I had this epiphany, man. I promise this is going to be relevant. I had this epiphany that, like, holy shit, without us ever realizing, without any type of fireworks or celebration or any time that we can clearly document, we slipped over into a reality where anytime somebody now shows me a poem they wrote, a speech they wrote, a song they made, even a movie that they directed, I will never actually know if they made it or if AI made it or assisted making it or whatever. We just live in a post AI reality where anything anybody now makes, I will always question. It will just be a lingering thought of like, I wonder how much of a role AI took in the creation of this. Um, so, anyways, with that segue out of the way. The realization for me was working on this, on these marketing videos for these big brands, the biggest brands. And instead of going to the usual websites we go to pull music, we would just go to Suno because it's fucking you own that shit and it was just cheaper than us doing anything else. So I was using Suno for a long time. I've been using 11 Labs for a long time. These are just kind of the go-to tools for when you need to make AI voices, music, yada yada. And I was doing that and it is what it is. That's just the biz. And I don't know when it dawned on me. You know what it was? I wrote a song. I'm like habitually writing songs. That's just like what I do. That's my spare time. I've always been an acoustic person. I just have acoustics all around my house. And if I'm watching TV or if I'm doing anything, I just have it in my lap and I'm strumming away, probably palm muting so I don't annoy the people around me. But I just noodle. It's my fidget toy. And I wrote this song that I was really proud of. I just spontaneously came to me at like fucking 1 a.m. I'm in my boxes and I have my acoustic. I just fully write out this whole song I really like. And I was sitting there and I was listening back. It's like, dude, this has something to it. And I don't know where the connection came from, but I was like, what happens if I put this demo I just recorded into Suno? What happens? And I did it. And it retained my vocals, it retained the notes I was playing on the guitar, it retained the complete essence of what I made, but it sounded like a produced song. Granted, it didn't have my vocals, it had an AI lady singing. I actually think that was that generation, but I was like, "Holy shit, man," like, on first try, when I put in the prompt, what I was thinking, "This is what I would want this song to sound like." Fucking nailed, like, a vision. I was like, "Dude, I just spent the last year in the studio working on an album manually, and, this just saved me, like, 3 weeks of working with all the musician friends that I work with, where a lot of the time that I was spending with them, every musician is different, but I come from a place where I come in with a demo acoustically laid out, and then I work back and forth with the musicians to try to find the sound that I mean, there's more collaboration in that process, but a lot of the dynamic that I've had is honestly like me just be like, "No, I think that the tone should be more like this or like that." And thankfully, I have a good enough support group where they were like willing to appease me and listen to what my ideal was. And I just realized that, like, yo, that was like weeks of time that I would spend with these musicians doing this thing, trying to find what was kind of in my head to like, holy shit, this tool.
And were you paying them?
No, these are just friends, you know? Like,
Yeah.
and, like, these are music I mean, I think that that's the thing, though, is that, like, because I have the street cred of being someone that can actually play, because I had the street cred of playing with these people in bands, because I've actually done this the manual way, when I came back around to these folks with, like, "Yo, check out this tool," and I would, like, show them my acoustic demo, and then I would show them this version of the song it made, and I was like, "This is, like, 70% the way that I was, like, imagining this demo would eventually sound." That's the new kicking off point with these friends of, like, "Oh, shit, let's, like, jam on this with your blueprint laid out." And that was kind of the deal is that we then could use this produced song not as the fucking we are making this song, but as a blueprint to begin the creative process. So again, like getting this vision of a thing helps me express the sound that I'm looking for, and then using that as a new foundation of a jumping off point. And what's really interesting in this new album I've been working on is that like I'd say 80% of the time the tracks that we actually recorded, you can hear where the AI influenced it, but you can also see how we use that as a base to then go in our own direction with that foundation that it gave us. And then a really interesting thing that spun out of it is Danny, my producer and a good friend, somebody I really look up to, who joined me on this journey. He did some really cool shit where he would actually take the stems from the AI produced song, then take that stem and then modify that and then begin using that as a MIDI track to create even different sounds on top of the sax that was playing in that. Like actually then beginning to use the stems, what the AI produced, as a whole new instrument to add layers to the song. It's like just wild workflows that I don't know they couldn't exist a year ago.
Man, and I gotta tell you, like, hearing that, I go back and forth. I've really mixed feelings because what we're really talking about is like pre-production, right? Like before you get into a studio, you would demo things out and you would bring it, and those would be like the tracks that just kind of sit there as you work through actually tracking it. But those demos, they still come from and this is what's so weird. They come from your brain, right? So you're imprinting them onto like, I want the guitar to sound like this, and you diddle and then you bring it to the studio. So instead of doing that on a guitar and like a microphone or whatever, you're doing it in Suno. And in some ways, I'm like, okay, that makes sense. It's still coming from your brain because you're tweaking Suno until it has the thing that you want to hear, and then you go into the studio and you make it sound and get closer. And I'm like, okay, that is human creativity. That to me does make sense, and it doesn't replace jobs either. You still even have players in the studio. I like that a lot. And that's what I had this moment of like, "Oh, shit." And you go even further than that. You've actually because I think the way you use Suno, a lot of us I mean, I did a piece of content about like that the other day, but now you're creating different stems, right? You've created your own system. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, so I mean, like, look, what I realized with this really quickly, as soon as I made that first demo, and I was pretty happy with how it turned out, I was like, yo, I could use these tools. Back at the time when I was doing this, Suno actually couldn't break the songs it generated into stems, but like there's a million tools out there at the time that could. So I went to a different tool, broke the AI song that was produced from my demo and got the stems from that using a different tool. And then what I was able to do was actually then be like, yo, the tone on that bass is exactly the tone that I was like thinking of. This fucking guitar solo over here, I don't give a shit about that guitar solo. That ain't what I want for this song. But it just started to load me with the vocabulary that I needed to be able to communicate with the people around me of what I think the vision could be for the song. With regards to like breaking the song into stems, I think that that's kind of where the magic lays. Where like the laziest person, the laziest person, you are just going to prompt the song and say you made a song. The next step of that would be then to make a song where you're like you grab your phone and you sing a whole song into it, and then let Suno do the thing. And then you just literally get the stems of what Suno made, switch out the vocals, and put your voice on that. That's an interesting thing. Again, the ethics of all this, I'm a pretty postmodern person. I don't know what is good or bad. For me personally, as an artist, feels kind of yuck. I don't really like that idea. But I also could think of 50 use cases where that's like, look, if you're wheelchair bound or you're whatever, and there was no, I don't know. There's a million reasons why that could be viable. For me personally, what I found is like what would feel authentic and genuine is to use these recordings and these stems as an influence and then going out and recording each of these stems individually. So you have this bass line that you're like, that's the right tone. Now grab your bassist friend and be like, and for me, it was important to be like, you do not have to do this bass line. Really, for me, it's more about the tone of what that produced.
But it could be the bass I could see you being like, "Hey, I hate the tone, but, like, I kinda like this part of the bass line." Like, I get that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But,
So,
you know,
yeah.
well, I wanna circle back to the yuck part of because when I did it, I saw a similar line of value, but then I was like, "Ugh." Like,
Yeah.
and part of me is like, is that just the old man in me? Like, did people feel that way about autotune? Right? Like, does it does it fucking matter? Like, if I kept doing it, would I move past it and see the value? But man, that yuck was there. Like, it felt real.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, look, there's something I heard. I don't know if this is true, but this had a tremendous amount of influence on me over the last year. I heard some study and didn't verify if it's true, but I think it serves as an anecdote. Either way, something about when they polled people by age on how they felt about AI, it's fairly consistent. People don't like it. Over the age of 15, you talk to a 14-year-old, they don't fucking give a shit. And the thought of that is that like these 14-year-olds and people who are born into a world where this just exists, they're going to grow up to be 20-year-olds. They're going to grow up to be 30-year-olds. They are going to grow up to be the masses. Now, some of them might detest it as they get older, but some of them might just not give a shit. So I think that you're kind of onto something here with like, is it the old man in me? I don't know, man. These tools aren't going away, is all I can say.
Well, and that's the part I'm trying to stomach is that, like, again, the people listening to this, most of them know how I feel. I think that when you look at the music industry, you ask yourself, you take the industry part out. What are we really trying to do? We're trying to elevate human creativity. We're trying to elevate humanity. I mean, as not to get historical, but like the Renaissance pulled humanity out of the dark ages for a reason, because creativity as a mechanism for humanity's movement into the future is invaluable. And this idea that we don't need to create, something else is creating for us, it chills me to my core. But that doesn't change the fact that it's fucking here, that it's not going away.
I would want to tag on to that is that yes, fucking yes. But my whole justification of me using these tools is that how you kind of introed this whole thing. Me, I have an entire career that asks of me at least 60 hours a week. Me making music while I have a career is me trying to have my cake and eat it. I'm trying to make music that will be of the same quality of those having the full-time jobs committed to the thing. I mean, like, on this new album, I was sitting there and it took me, I think literally it was like 32 takes of my vocals to just get it. And then you kind of fucking Frankenbite that whole thing together and you make your perfect thing. And I was talking to fucking Danny about like how crazy is it that like that's so manipulative. That's not actually that took me a lot of takes to get the vocals down across that whole song in each little section. And then I realized that, like, yeah, you know what the difference is between me and like Paul McCartney, though, is that like Paul McCartney got to focus on his craft and his passion since he was like 16. I had to fucking go to college and get a job and learn how to provide value. And I just was not able to practice enough and be talented enough to nail that on my first or second take. We use a tool so that I can do the take 40 times and then we splice it up and get the best take. And that's without using AI. I mean, that's just the way that you do this shit, right?
Are you too old to be a musician?
Yes.
If you're over 19, then yes. No. Well, I'm surprised we haven't talked about this before, because this is a constant conversation. And I work mostly in country, so it's always this topic because women in country get ousted really quickly, but dudes can just sing country music to the day they die. It's really an interesting conversation, but let's get into it. What's too old to be a musician? When should everybody give up?
So
That's a hard line to draw.
I view, when I talk about this, I view like three kind of things to think about. One is, yeah, the sexism is very, very real. It is much
Mhm.
harder for women than it is for men. Let's just put that on the table, call it like it is. It really fucking sucks. Two, so much of being like a cool artist is kind of not just having a clear vision and being able to execute on that, but sort of being in touch with the culture. And think like what I see, because I work with like a lot of rock, and what I frequently see is, and some country and some, lots of stuff, but what I will see is like people are just not in touch with the culture. And so they're just doing things that just look uncool because they're not like the artists I work with who are like cool are the ones who are like paying attention to the zeitgeist and able to like create things within the zeitgeist that like they understand that like people will get excited about because it's cool. And I think after a certain age, like it's hard to stay cool on that level when like you have a job and kids, just like straight up. So that's another big piece to think about. And I think the final piece is when you're 22, you have a lot less responsibility and a much better body where you can go live in a van for 8 months out of the year and you're not gonna like die. That's really valuable. Like that's a really valuable thing that you can't like get back. That being said, I do not think that there is such thing as too old. And I feel like I very frequently will get plugged into projects with the average age of 45 plus, and it does fucking great because the people are plugged into the zeitgeist. They work really hard. They're willing to eat shit. You know, they've made like you're always making sacrifices in your life, but it's a bigger sacrifice when you're 45 and own a house and have a wife than when you're 22 and single and living with four roommates. You know what
Well,
I
so
mean? So,
there's
but I
two
don't think you
parts
can
of
be
this,
too
right?
old.
Yeah, there's the can you physically, like, what is your lifestyle like? Can you actually pursue being a musician? And from a marketing standpoint, how do you build a brand around anybody at any age, whether you're 19, 35, or 62, right? But I hard disagree on, I'm not saying you can't be a musician. I just think that there's a different set of challenges and a different way to approach it at different ages. And I'm sorry, but some genres, you're just going to have an uphill battle. It reminds me of there was a season of American Idol, like probably like 15 years ago, where this guy gets on there and he sings, is this balding 55-year-old dude, and he had a song called like Cotton Candy Pop or something. He starts singing it, and it's exactly what it sounds like. And it's like, look, man, this is an uphill battle for you. It's not impossible, but it's tough. Like, your branding has to make sense.
I think there's an interesting counterpoint, though, to all this, is that so much music discovery today is very faceless. And what I have seen repeatedly is that there's a lot of groups that, when no one knows how old they are, that start making really interesting conversions because people just like the song. It's not this Susan Boyle thing where it's novelty and like
Yeah.
whatever, that like you actually get this. Like, I've had a few people, and I remember the first time this tide changed was the group Beach Slang, who later got canceled for being abusive. But he was I did publicity for his band when I was 17, and then 12 years later have no idea he's in this band, and everybody's just like, oh my God, this band's huge, but he's in his 30s. And it started to pop off, and they had a real moment. Like, they were killing it for a while, and then shit happened. But like, there's this very interesting thing to get into. The balance of it is that you usually get better at the skill of writing songs. The problem
Yes.
is the skill of writing songs is not what makes a great song solely. It's also making a strong emotion, and our emotions usually become less volatile as we get older. And
Yeah.
that volatility and feeling stronger often is a major ingredient that you start to get a disadvantage of. And if you can't even this out, a lot of the times people end up writing a little less bold. They get more modest. They don't need to scream to the world the way an Amy Winehouse and a Kurt Cobain did. And your shit's mid.
That's why I like Haley Williams, because her stuff is just as controversial now, but it's the millennial existential crisis, right? It's the crisis our generation, I think I'm the same age as her, where she sings about anxiety and sings about these things that a millennial deals with that isn't just like taking my kids to school, right? Like the boring part of it.
It's a great point.
I think the real answer, so if someone's like, am I too old to be in music? It's really like, every genre and every style of music and every artist has a demographic they appeal to. And if you don't align with that, you're fucked. And it
Yeah.
doesn't matter. Like, if you're 19, you're trying to fit into like a classic rock audience, you're not screwed because you're old, you're screwed because you're young. And in some cases, there's ways to spin that, but like it just
Greta
matters.
Van
Like,
Fleet enters the chat. What are you talking about? I get it.
Well,
You're trying to find an analogy, though. I get it.
it's an uphill battle though, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
there-
it
there's
is.
certain genres where like if I was at a Breaking Benjamin 3 Days Grace show, and this like young band came on, they started playing like kind of classic rock stuff, and at first they look like kids, and they start playing, and it's kind of like, oh, what's this gonna be like, and they were sick. But it is kind of this thing where like the band didn't really fit the vision until we heard them play, and then they sold us on their vision. And I think ultimately it just, the only thing that really matters is, does the look and what you're writing fit with the demographic you're trying to appeal to? And if you're like a 50-year-old trying to make bubblegum pop that appeals to teenage girls, you have basically nothing in common with that demographic. You're not going to write stuff that appeals to them, probably, at least. And it's not necessarily just the music, it's like the aesthetic, and is that crowd going to
Like,
accept
how
you?
can this person understand me? Yeah, this guy is older than my dad. And you could
yeah.
replace ageism with a lot of other things. Ugly, fat. Like, there
Yeah.
are challenges at a market. Like, pretty privilege is a real thing.
Oh, yeah.
And you can, I remember when before Luke Combs was Luke Combs, I went to a conference and I was just talking to some label guy, and he was just generally talking about like we're looking at this one artist, but he's kind of heavy and not very good looking. And then that was at a time in like bro country where you had all these really good looking guys. And he's like, I don't think we're going to sign him because he doesn't have the look. And I knew he was talking about Luke Combs because I knew Luke and I called him out on it. And sure enough, Luke is one of the biggest country artists of all time. So, you know, there are challenges, but you can overcome them.
And to your point, and I'll follow it up with the example that you used, which is Greta Van Fleet. When Greta Van Fleet launched, everybody wanted to hate. The single worst Pitchfork review of all time. Greta Van Fleet sounded like they did weed exactly once, called the cops on themselves, and tried to record a Led Zeppelin album before they arrested themselves. But you know, the funniest thing is, I remember being like, oh, their career is over. This Pitchfork reviewer has single-handedly ended their career. And you know, what happens? Greta Van Fleet just keeps getting bigger and bigger every year because they appealed to people emotionally and got over it and gave them a mood-altering drug that made them feel the way they wanted to feel.
But they also leaned into the look. They had like the whole hippie thing, and they try to present and they say stuff on stage that like Robert Plant could have said, and which
How
is
many
fine.
16-year-old girls are in the crowd tonight?
Okay, that was
Jesus
Jimmy Page,
Christ.
first of all.
Yeah.
So I think kind of what we're circling around here, but just to say it a little more obliquely, is like if you're 55 and you're trying to do it, like act 55, because like nothing is cringe. Like we've all been to like bars or like club nights or whatever where there was like a 55-year-old trying to act like he was 26, and that guy is sad. And no,
Is
but
the
really,
word chop dunk?
Chopped unk.
no, but like you know what I'm saying, right? Where it's like that guy
Like
could
when
be
you
totally
see like Bob Seger live, he's not trying to move around and act like he's 20 because he's like 80 or whatever,
yeah,
right?
and,
It's
and
like he,
like what I'm trying to say is like, and like you should and can have energy, and that's valuable, right? But like I think that like trying to act like you're dramatically younger than you are because you feel like this is going to be a limitation, like when you project that kind of insecurity, people just take you less seriously, right? Because like so much of this is like confidence, and then confidence while showing extreme vulnerability, right? Where it's like if you're willing to just like be like, here's my vision, here is my art, and I am fully committed to it. Please don't make fun of me, I guess. Like people will take you a lot more seriously because you're like opening yourself up, right? Trying to hide that under a veneer of like, I'm 55, but I could totally be 32 is just like,
Well, let's even take that to a degree where a lot of artists, mid-20s artists, because I think that this is, and Jesse, you mentioned that one artist you said who hit like 25 and is having a crisis. That's super normal because I think from a young age, usually these artists are like virtuosos, right? Like they're the person in their town that everybody's like, you've got this, right? And then they hit their early 20s, they have an opportunity or two, things are going okay. And then they hit like 25, and it's the first time in their life they've hit an age where they've outgrown probably their initial branding. And so they start to panic because they don't understand that the adjustment you make isn't can I or can I not be a musician? It's now my story is different. Now I'm a little seasoned. I'm living here, let's just say New York, and I have, you know, I went from being like a college age party person to maybe like I'm more of like a Friends, right? Like I'm more of living that sitcom life. And so you adjust your story, but it's that adjustment that is panic inducing because nobody gives a shit about you just on the surface because you're 19 and an amazing guitarist or whatever it is.
there's also a lot of those
man,
people look at the big artists that are on the radio and hitting Billboard charts, and I don't know the best current examples, so I'll speak to some millennial examples. They look at the Justin Bieber, they look at the Taylor Swifts, you know, like who were blowing up when they're like teenagers,
yeah,
and they're like, "I'm 25, I missed my boat."
yeah,
But all those like kids that blow up are the by far the minority, and that typically only applies if you're trying to be like the upper echelon top 0.01% major label pop star. Like the for the vast majority of artists who have very successful careers, they are not even close to those major label Billboard charting artists or whatever, but they still have very fulfilling careers. So there's also the like adjustment to maybe you had a dream of being like a Taylor Swift level artist.
And now you got
But
to mourn that.
99.99999% of artists are not that. But you could be this artist that has like a million monthly listeners who is making a full-time, satisfying living off their music, touring, tons of fans that love them. And that's still pretty freaking awesome.
By the way, I don't think
I'll-
most of you would enjoy that level of fame.
Yes,
It's a
but I'll
fucking nightmare.
follow up with your point here, which is that like I remember in the big emo bust, you had bands that like I'd be working with like Census Failed, the Plaque Behind Me, and the drummer was 15 when they signed to the major label, and it, and then people biggest band in the world was My Chemical Romance. They'd be like, and then everybody be like, oh, we're getting too old. We're 21. My Chemical Romance. I'm like, My Chemical Romance is my age, which was the mid-20s at the time. And I remember then years later when I started working at Atlantic, I had a friend who was really getting bummed about turning 27. His life is over. He's never getting signed. And we actually did the math of what age artists got signed on average to Atlantic, and it was 29 at the time. Because you had a lot of artists that were like, the unk rock, dad rock type stuff that they were signing that, brought the average age up. But like the big thing is that like a lot of the time you're going to go on a journey and your fans are going to come with you. And when they first check in and emotionally bond with you, that's really a lot of it. But a lot of people bond with the artist on the third or fourth record.
I think it's a question of like realizing that stars can align in different ways. And the only way, like the best tool you have to like get the stars to align is like showing up consistently. And then one day it will work out if you're like showing up consistently, like every day, not once every 6 months. And like, if you're pushing consistently and trying to be a good person and whatever, stars will start to align. For some people, that happens when they're 15. For some people, it happens at 39. Like I think just for example, everyone on this group chat knows that we're all like 2 really good parties or meetings away from like adding a 0 to our net worth. Like there's like ways it can happen if like you've laid the foundation.
And Jelly Roll only got big, like, big in terms of his success, like a few. He lost like 200 or 300 pounds.
Yeah,
So he's
GLP won for the win.
Yeah.
Hey,
for
whatever
real.
gets you there, bro.
Yep.
Good for him.
Yeah, and like he only got huge, successfully in the last few years, right? And I'm sure he's had some journey along the way that there was some slower creep, but he's 41. Like he's 41 years old. The last like 4 years have been the biggest of his career ever, right? Like he started his music career in 2003 from according to Wikipedia. But he rose to mainstream prominence in 2022. So when he was 38 or something like that.
I mean, it's hard to do even in country. It's much more typical in country, mainly because so many. I mean, I'll tell you that a lot of these artists start as writers, and then at some point they write a song, and somebody's like, "Hey, bro, do not give that song away," and that's usually how a dude in country that their story starts. And they put out the song, and then they build a career. Women in country, it's sort of interesting because country, the industry itself, sort of has an unlimited bandwidth for men, and then they slot a couple of females in. So whether it's a radio station, a festival, they're like, cool, all these guys, also we should throw in a couple of women, right? And then there's a hierarchy there, and if they're taking a chance with an artist, they'll take a chance with a younger artist, a younger female artist. So there's I've worked with enough women in country that it angers me to an extreme degree that the industry is that way. Listeners are not, though. Listeners, especially in country, do not care about a woman's age if they write a fucking banger. Like they will, because there's a lot of women who listen to country music who see themselves in these older women. And so if you're a female woman, if you are a woman in country
Getting
and
into
you're
some
like
Ben Shapiro territory
oh
here.
God, it just took a turn. I would say go, and it's like this across the board. If the industry is not giving you looks because your age, your looks, your height, your weight, whatever, just go after the fans. Because if you become undeniable, all those people, whether they like it or not, will come along.
Yeah, the other thing I will say is I think we're more primed than ever to have big seismic movements for artists' careers because so many songs just get popular on TikTok or through playlists that no one has any idea. Like I think of someone like King Khan and the Barbecue Show, and one of the biggest TikTok trends. I mean, dude is pushing 50, and that was like 3-4 years ago. And it's like you can have all these moments that were not possible as much in the MTV era. And I think we actually are in the good news era, that a lot more of this is possible.
One of the interesting things is like we're now, I don't know, like 10 years into having musicians. Well, that's not even true. We're like 25 years into having musicians who've had access to all the music since they started being interested in music, right? First because of piracy, then because of streaming, right? Like your access to records when Andrew and I were kids, we were torrenting and stuff. We weren't going down to the record store and paying with 2 nickels, Jesse.
Well, I think this is the William Gibson quote of "the future is here, it's just not evenly distributed."
Yes. But what I'm trying to say is,
I used to find so many bands through like LimeWire
yeah.
searches. It
But
was
what I'm trying to say is, so like the culture of consuming music has so radically shifted that older people are also now spending more time on music discovery than they were 20 years ago. And so that means that like the whole niche of like 50-year-olds discovering other 50-year-olds making cool music is dramatically bigger than it was even at the start of my career 12 years ago. You know, like I see it happening in real time.
totally. And on like platforms like TikTok and stuff, I've talked to artists who are older. They're like, should I like I shouldn't be on TikTok, right? Like there's no need. I'm a 40-year-old musician or whatever. And it's like there's if the algorithm's job is to find who's gonna like what you do. So as long as you're like doing stuff that's something for your music, like your age doesn't matter.
Yeah, if it's
I'll
valuable to
randomly
somebody, that's what matters.
Yeah, yeah, and like I'll open up I've seen like every single age on TikTok accounts with over 1 million followers for every type of content. I'm sure we all have. It's like you open it up, you get a random comedian who's 67 years old, and then you get another one that's 19. And it's just like there's finding the people who dig it and value it. And yeah, so I think like whatever your like asterisk is for like, I can't be a musician because blah, whether that's like age or gender or race or whatever it is, it's like don't let it fucking stop you because and there might be bullshit in it, but like you can overcome those obstacles no matter what. It's
Well,
like
and when people tell
music
me,
industry is super like male dominated, right?
yeah,
But that's a thing that most like a lot of women push through, and they kind of push all women forward in the industry, you know.
We have seen a dramatic increase in the consumption of music by females because of the presence of female songwriters in music today. And I think that trend is going to continue to grow, and it's a good thing.
I'm sure country music used to be just a bunch of white dudes like 20 years ago, and now there's way more everything.
there's still so many white dudes.
Yeah. I mean, the stories of what Shabuzi had to do to get to be accepted in that genre are not good stories.
Which is funny to me because the industry, yes, but I think country fans want some flavor. They want some different viewpoints and perspectives. But even now, I mean, I just had a conversation with a pretty prominent songwriter where he walks into rooms and people will still tell him like, well, that's not how Music Row does it. Like they still lean on this bullshit of like, this is how we do it. Meanwhile, the rest of the industry is like moving on and finding different ways. You know, it's still so antiquated in a lot of ways.
Thank you all so much for listening to this podcast. We're trying to get this to go as far as it can, so please start a conversation with a musician friend by sending it to them.
If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe on your favorite podcast app. If you're on YouTube, subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss our episodes every single Tuesday. And if you can rate us on Apple and Spotify, it helps us a ton. Tune in next week for more.
And remember, this week we're going to be a little late because we're coming to you from NAMM later in the week.